welcome to the Food for Thought podcast. I'm your host, Erin Hallstrom. When we hear about entrepreneurs and startups in the food and beverage industry, the category that often gets lost in the shuffle is one that, you could say, has the most spirited approach to new product development. Here to talk about the untapped market for advising and mentoring the independent brand owners and entrepreneurs in the wine, beer, and spirits category is Taylor Foxman, creator of the Industry Collective. Launched in 2020, the Industry Collective takes the wisdom of numerous experts around the globe in the beer, wine, and spirits category and uses it to advise entrepreneurs, startups, and others on how to make the biggest splash into the market. Throughout the episode, Taylor walks us through why organizations like the Industry Collective are needed in the wine, beer, and spirits category, as well as how she's turning the collective into the ultimate resource for the entire beverage industry. Raise a glass and enjoy this week's episode. Taylor, welcome to the Food for Thought podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Really looking forward to talking to you and what you do for the beverage industry. I tend to talk to so many people that are within the snack or baby food or strictly food that it is a treat to get to talk to someone who is within strictly the beverage industry. So our listeners who may be in the strictly beverage industry, I hope will appreciate and enjoy this even more. I want to have our audience get to know you and what you do a little bit more. So I want to start off by talking about what the Industry Collective is. Can you explain it in a little more detail?
Absolutely, and thank you again for the opportunity, Erin. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. The Industry Collective is comprised of, a series of experts all around the world, and we also have about 15 founders and CEOs that we work with across the wine, beer, and spirit space, primarily fast-growing, small to mid-size beverage brands. And so the inception for the business really came from my background. I've worked since I was in college for about 70 or 80 at this point, global wine, beer, and spirit brands ranging from, really iconic companies from Boston Beer Company to Absolut to Jameson to Jägermeister, which was a fun brand to work on. And saw an interesting opportunity area, which was, you have about 6,000 to 7,000 approximately independent wine and spirit brands here in the U.S., not even really factoring in beer at this point. And where I saw an opportunity was in and around resources for these founders. Up until the past year and a half, 2 years, and Erin, we talked about this just a little bit during our introductory call, but there weren't as many resources available for independent brands in the beverage space. When you think about, investments, there were only really a handful of bigger companies that would partially acquire your brands, which does come at a cost, a literal and metaphorical cost. In terms of distribution, wider nut to, bigger conversation to have, but there's a system in place called the 3-tier system, making it difficult for spirit brands to sell to their own directly to their own consumers. And then when it comes to other resources, I'm kind of the jack of all trades on that front. A lot of these entrepreneurs in this space don't necessarily come from beverage alcohol. They are entrepreneurs that, like they say on Shark Tank, found a problem and try to create a solution for it. And this industry is just unbelievably complex. So where I come in is I serve as, this advisor to all of these different founders and CEOs, and so does the rest of my company. And, we really help them across the board when it comes to counsel, whether it's, strategy around how to go to market and sell sell products. That's what we call go to market. whether it's, expansion of a product portfolio, development of a thought leadership program. Founders, what do they stand for? Who are they? And also developing their story, because a lot of times, even though you would assume that many years into the development of a company that they have that figured out, most don't yet. So I really kind of come in and plug and play me and my team services based on the needs of the company that, quite frankly, that resource really didn't exist prior.
I have so many questions for you based on that introduction, which was so rich with information. So before we dig in, or I guess as part of the digging in, can you tell me a little bit more about your background? Maybe talk about how you arrived at where you're at now.
Absolutely. So I'm one of those people that, majored in communications, interned for a vodka company, and have stayed in my lane. I've been fortunate enough, though, however, to, over the years, be able to work with such incredible brands, work with such incredible teams, and really have honestly been on all sides of the alcohol spectrum. I'm looking up at my desk, and there's a photo of a racehorse. The racehorse is named Vigors, and it was from a race back in the 60s or 70s, and my mom loved horse racing, and she's always compared me to this horse because I keep my blinders on, and I always kind of continue to go back to that. I realized in college that there was an opportunity to work in communications in beverage, and, postponed a master's. I was supposed to go to USC at Annenberg School of Communications at USC in California right after college, and got an opportunity right off the bat to work for, Glenlivet and Jameson and Redbreast and all these amazing brands, what we call brown spirits, whiskeys and the like. And I continued to not believe that I could work in a category like that and get paid. And so postponed that master's, I've never subsequently gone back, but have found such joy in working in this sector in really all facets. I started out my career packing boxes of whiskey for a PR firm. And I don't know if I've ever shared this story, but I was told at the time to pack boxes, not reach out to people, on the editorial side. And I happened to reach out to, the editor-in-chief of Men's Health at the time. And I was 21 years old. And I just said, I really love what you're doing, and I would love to get together. And it kind of just started this, this runway for me. Which even though I stayed in my lane has really expanded, right, over the years. But I started, packing boxes and making relationships and have not stopped. I mean, I've stopped packing boxes, but I have not stopped with the relationships. And, over the years, I have worked for, various PR agencies, and I switched over and, evolved my work as head of communications for Pernod Ricard, running, the second largest global wine and spirit company in the world, and now have my own entrepreneurial endeavor in spirits. And so I still feel like I'm that racehorse, but I feel like I've been granted the opportunity to, evolve my skill sets, mature my, my professionalism, but be able to still stay in that metaphorical lane, and really over the years just work to become, if someone's looking for a resource, in the space, I hope that, I'm someone that is considered at this point, which I think I am.
I want to go back to a data point you brought up, because this number seems shocking to me. Did you say that there were 6,000 to 7,000 independent brands when it came to like wine, spirits, beer within? Did I get that right? 6,000 to 7,000?
6,000 to 7,000.
Okay.
67,000.
Okay.
And
all right.
That's in wine. Yeah, and that's in wine and spirits. The beer sector, I'm assuming, is its own beast. I don't know offhand exactly how many I can gather, and based on my time working for Boston Beer, I know that is a whole other conversation in of itself. But no, 6,000 is approximately what I've been told most recently by one of the bigger organizations in the space.
that is a lot. I love what you're doing on helping them with the resources, because that's a lot of brands and that's a lot of people. I know we on food processing we've covered a lot of like the food entrepreneurs, the not the Kickstarters, but I guess in some way the Kickstarters, the companies that, you had someone who knew a guy who had the lab know-how to cellular biology, and look at that, they've created a lab-grown meat company or what have you, but it's really the person with the entrepreneurial, know-how that's what really helped to get it up off the ground.
Right.
So I know from our listeners, from our readers, that it's those resources that are so hard to come by and that's so much appreciated, because you may be a great mixologist, you may be a great entrepreneur creating companies, but unless you have the perfect cross of you've done both, you're a great mixologist who has launched a really impressive wine or spirit company, you're needing resources. So I think it's great. So I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but can you tell a little more, like the idea, and again, I'm kind of speaking to the resources, the idea of coming up with the industry collective, because I know you've been in the spirits, the beverage space for your entire career now, but where else? Can you speak more to, like, where did the idea, what was your light bulb moment? Like, I really just, enough is enough. I need to create this.
It's quite the opposite. So I have also a full-time job in cannabis. So, there's never really a right time per se. We had a family sickness and COVID, and so definitely not the right time. There was no I think this is a good moment in time. I think that's what they say about having children, from what I'm told too. With that being said, I actually, funny enough, so the original model for this was a little bit different than the current model, and now it's kind of a hybrid. So the original concept was actually to take all of these experts that I've worked with over the last decade, from bartenders to mixologists to sommeliers, and actually connect them to brands. Where the original idea was that, you have a lot of these big companies that, in my opinion, don't really necessarily always, look at third-party experts to maybe look at something a little bit differently, or to challenge them, or, even know where to go to find experts. Like thinking about that. Where do we go to find a sommelier, a bartender? There's no website. There's nowhere to go.
Right.
So I thought, can I create? Right. So that was the first idea, was I know all these people. I highly admire them. Can I create kind of like a one-stop shop where brands would reach out and say, I'm looking to create a sustainability program. Who do you got? Right. And then I'd say, it's so funny you mention it. And then I'd bring in one of the top founders of one of the most sustainable beverage brands in the world, based in London. So that was the original idea. And, how it kind of unfolded so far was, me being recommended, quite frankly, to all of the business so far. And it was kind of, it was all word of mouth, where, I started working and, advising one group. And then, they said, you should really get in touch with the collective because, you need similar resources and they needed similar resources. And that was really it. And so where we're at now is we have this, array of different, companies that we work with, all of which, as I mentioned, are fast-growing brands across wine, beer, and spirits. And really, the model's still the same in the sense that we plug and play, the experts or the people working on the business based on the needs that they have. I look at it from their perspective. So I sit down usually with the founders and understand where they're at. What are their goals? Are they looking to raise more capital? Do they want to get sold? A lot of brands do. No problem with that. Are they looking to create, more product and buy pot stills? Like, where are they at, right? And then understand, okay, well, based on the services that we offer and the people we have on board, here's how we can help work with you. And I will say that one of the interesting facets of it is that I do service, we service people actually on a rolling basis. And the model works very well because I started this business amidst COVID. Still is COVID. There is still COVID going on, and I'm not laughing. I'm not trying to be whatever. At this point, you kind of have to have some levity to all of this. But why I offered that for these entrepreneurs. So what I mean by rolling is, as opposed to bringing in, as I said, all of these resources prior, we will plug and play the right experts, and we will help provide them the resources that whether they don't want to allocate necessarily all the money in the funds to, or they can't, or they don't know where to go, we can provide that for them, right? So that kind of feeds into what entrepreneurs are looking for. Like, I don't need to find all these people or spend all this money. I can kind of get all of our resources in one-stop shop. The other facet of it is a lot of times during COVID, you don't necessarily want to shackle yourself to a 2-year contract with, all these different vendors. You really want to have a partner that is nimble and flexible and gets it. And so I've always been of the mind frame, look, let's work together and keep it rolling, not only because I know that as an entrepreneur, every hour of every day things change for you. You're going to need a pivot, like I need a pivot. So why do we need to hold ourselves to those traditional confines when right now there are no rules anymore? And the other is I can guarantee that given that you're a startup, your needs will change. They may change tonight or tomorrow. So again, why shackle ourselves to a scope of work that's so specific for 2 years when we can provide you with the right experts and the right resources on a rolling basis?
You keep talking about resources. My next question for you is, are the resources people? I mean, is it like, hey, here's a calculator I can use? Is it a PDF? One of the podcasts we recorded earlier this year talked about how PepsiCo works with companies to, like, you want to, like the Stacey's Rise project, and hey, you want to kickstart
right.
or you want to help build you came up with a great idea, female in the food business, and we're going to help you take it from idea to execution to getting it on the shelves. And the biggest thing that they do is they pair mentors. And I use that as kind of is that what the resources are for this? Is it like a mentorship pairing? Are there actual hard draft downloadable resources? Is it people? Is it consulting?
Thank you. No one's asked me this before, so it's a really good trial by fire to answer your question. No. I mean, I can definitively say I don't even have a printer. I have no office, so I can't provide any type of tangible resources of that. No, that's a very good question. No, I mean, so not in theory, are we giving them pot stills, or we're handing them, tools and actual things to use to help build their brand? And no, it's expertise across the board. So expertise across everything, no. And so that's kind of why this model is, in my mind and from what we've heard so far, extremely unique. I think also we really are not trying to peg ourselves as a vendor. We're the anti-vendor of record. We really integrate ourselves into these businesses. We get email addresses with these companies. We're on, virtual happy hours with these teams. I mean, we are really integrated. And I think there is some beauty in working with startups now, having been, on the big brand side, as I said, because they're very fluid, if they're totally open to new ideas, where I'm not necessarily saying that big brands aren't innovative or nimble. They are, but there are always so many more layers, you know what I mean, by default. And what I think is really cool about all this is that you have myself, you have my team, you have all these experts that can look in things and poke holes and say, wait a minute. Did you even think about XYZ? And whether or not they have the ability to do that time-wise, budget-wise is another story. But just being able to be this kind of third-party expert, fluid company that we don't even have, we've never announced we have launched. We haven't done any marketing, no PR, no social media, nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, social media, we have an Instagram, and a website. So let me back up. But in the
it's a great
sense
website,
of,
by the way.
well, thank you. I did not do that myself, but my husband actually helped with that. But one of the things is like, I think there is that element of kind of the beauty of being underground and not really having to necessarily like define what we are, because I think the future of a lot of these startups really needs to be fluid. Like, like whether it's the people they work with or the ideas and where they come from. And I'll stop nerding out in a minute, but you're seeing this shift. And Erin, we talked about this when we initially connected, where you have so many of these brands that would have never, ever, ever been able to even get a remote share of voice, share of conversation, visibility on social, funding. And this is not just due to me. This is what I said earlier, which is there are resources. There's financial resources. There are, advisory like us. There are distribution routes. There's just so much more there that what's stopping these people from being able to go head-to-head with so many other companies that up until this moment in time, was that even a possibility? And I'm not sure.
Right. So really quick, while we're still on the topic of financial resources, something that's jumping out to me in my head is, do you help with folks with like venture capital, set them up, or like if there's like pitch fests going on, do you help in that capacity of like, or do your experts kind of set them up on like, all right, you're going to pitch your product, or you're going to pitch your brand? Is that a realm of expertise that your experts help with?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely. So we have, some really strong relationships with, different food and beverage VC firms, just given our line of work. And so less about, yes, we also help, if there are companies that are looking to raise funds, we help them with the strategy for that, and also if there are strategic introductions that we could potentially make, we help support them there. But I'm actually way more focused on what I call like the broader expertise around relationship management. I have been a huge proponent of relationship management from, as I said, from, my younger years through now. And I think in investment too, even though I'm not actively in that space, falls very much in line with how I look at all of my strategy, which is looking at your stakeholders and really, really first understanding like their viewpoint, whether it's current investors in a company, potential investors, employees, potential employees, media, whoever it is, taking yourself out of the equation. Forget about, like, no offense, like a pitch deck. Pitch decks matter. But what do these people need from you, founder of wine brand X, for them to even want to open your email? Like, what about you is different? And spend the time to try to figure that out before you refine your Calibri size 10 font. So like, yes, we provide more of the tactical support in if they're, developing a strategy like that. Absolutely, our team does that. But where, me personally, where I come in, at times is helping some of these people, especially when they're founders in companies that, things are running a million miles a minute and, they're trying to manage not going under and paying for this and doing this, is to try to take a step back and really think about that's, something like investment and we can talk about it as much as you want, but, you're asking people to put, faith in what you're doing financially, but also, their reputation. So how do you go about that in a way that feels authentic? And in my viewpoint, it is not by immediately pitching a deck. It's like probably you get pitched all the time, brands and people that want what you are offering. In their case, they're offering money. In your case, you're offering visibility, right? So through all that you do, through pocket. So going into it with a different viewpoint has always been how I recommend people do things. Because if you go into a relationship where you genuinely are like, look, Erin, I really love what you're doing. I do. I love what you're doing. And, we get to know each other. It's an entirely different relationship. And I think both benefit better when it's authentic and it's genuine. So I think the same way about investments. I think if people are looking to get investments from people, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of an authority as someone in that space, but I look at it as that is a stakeholder that is constantly being reached out to by people. How can you differentiate yourself? And in my opinion, it is being authentic and being genuine and not just reaching out to people when you need something. And in that case, it's money.
Right. Totally agree. So we could talk for hours. We know this. In our previous conversations, I think we have talked for hours, but I know our podcast listeners do not have all the hours in the world. So I'm going to wrap up with this one last question. And say there's a aspiring or a mixologist with an idea wants to get in touch, or someone with beverage industry expertise that wants to lend their expertise, how could they get in touch and be a part of the Industry Collective?
Yeah, easy enough. It's just you can email me at taylor@theindustrycollective.org, or just go on theindustrycollective.org online, and we would love to connect with you, whether you're a brand or you're an expert. We are always looking for more strong brain power aboard.
Thank you for being on the Food for Thought podcast.
Thank you, Erin. This has been great. I really, really appreciate it.
For everyone listening to the Food for Thought podcast today, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and just about everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Be sure to tune in next time as we talk more about the stories behind the headlines of the food and beverage industry. Take care. Have a great day.